Hey everybody, it's Courtney and I am here with another project for Trinity Stamps. Today I'll be using the stamp set Succulent Banner, and I'm going to be working on a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock here, and this is cut down to 4¼ by 5½. I did bring out my Misty for this just because this is a pretty large image, so I had a feeling I was going to have to or want to stamp this twice. I went ahead and aligned this up on my cardstock slightly towards the top, but still in the center. And I used an anti-static tool because we will be doing some heat embossing. I'm going to stamp this twice with my VersaFine Onyx black ink, and then I'll use the clear embossing powder over that. Now, before you take your heat gun to this cardstock, any cardstock will warp if you add too much heat to it. For some reason, I find that this cardstock warps a little bit more than others. So you'll just want to make sure that your heat tool is heated up real good before you actually bring it to the paper. This will eliminate some of the warping. You'll still have a little bit, but I typically use a wet glue when I adhere everything to my card base. So I usually don't have too much of a problem getting that stuck down evenly. Now, once that was all heat set, we will move on to the coloring. And I am breaking out of my comfort zone here, and I'll be using the Arteza real brush markers. Now, these are similar to the Zig markers from what I hear. I don't own the Zig real brush pens yet. I'm still saving up for them to add them to my inventory. But I am going to be coloring these the same way as everybody does with the Zigs. So for this larger succulent right here in the center, I'm using 3 colors. One's kind of like a medium green, one's a lime green, and one is a yellow. I just lay out my colors, concentrating my darkest areas being off to the left, and maybe if there is any shadows, I do add those with the darkest color just because I'm used to that with my Copics. And then I'm taking a damp brush and just letting those colors kind of blend out on their own. Now you can use a water brush here. I don't particularly like those. For some reason, I either have too much water coming out or not enough, so I prefer just to use my own paintbrush. And this is a number 4 brush from the Silver Brush Company. Now, when I use my paintbrush for this, it's damp. It's not soaking wet. I am cleaning it off each time, but I am dabbing most of the water off with a paper towel before I bring it to my image. For this next succulent over here, I am using just 2 colors. Now, these are kind of like a darker yellow-green. I compare everything to Copic colors, so these would be like your YG 90s. So I'm just laying out the 2 colors, again, bringing in my damp paintbrush and letting them blend on their own. These are smaller areas, not really worried about a shadow here. Now for this larger succulent here right in the center that kind of looks like a flower, and for the one off to the right there that also looks like a flower, I'm just using 1 color. So for the center one, I'm using a purple and just laying out my colors right where the petals kind of meet each other in the center. Then bringing in my damp paintbrush and just letting that blend out to the tips of the petals so that my darkest areas will be where my natural shadows would be for this type of image. Same thing for this smaller one. I'm just using pinks, but basically doing it the same way. Now for these little vines that are kind of hanging off this banner, these are teeny tiny areas. So I am taking a blue pen here and just putting a dot right there in the center. I'm not doing any kind of blending. There is no room to do any blending. So I'm just laying down a little bit of color to not leave those completely black and white. For the banner, I wanted this to be a white banner, but as we know, everything that's white still has a shadow. So I'm using a gray marker here and just adding a little bit of shading to either end of the banner as well as underneath that purple succulent, and then blending that out with my damp paintbrush again. This is a fairly light gray, so you're not going to get all that much contrast or dimension, but it does give you a little bit. Now I let this air dry. It only takes a few minutes being we're not using so much water. And we'll move on to the sentiment. There's quite a few sentiments in this set, and I am using this curved Thankful. There's a lot of curved ones in here that fit inside that banner, and you can see my little L didn't stamp very good there. I'm not going to try to line this stamp up again and restamp it. I'll fix that later. I added my clear embossing powder again and heat set this, being careful not to remelt that embossing powder from the original image that we had in the beginning. For the background, I didn't want to leave this just plain white, so I took the black pen from the set and I just scribbled some of that onto an acrylic block, wet down my paintbrush, and just had little teeny tiny splatters all over the card panel. And then again, I put that aside to dry. Now I didn't want to lay this flat on a card base. I wanted there to be a little bit of a background or a little border on the one side. And out of all of the pattern paper that I have collected over the years, I did not have any black and white stripes. So I'm going to create my own. This is a piece of Nina Solar White, and I'm taking my ruler and an EK Success journaling pen because it's Copic safe. And I am just drawing in diagonal lines all the way down. I'm not going all the way across my card panel because you're not going to end up seeing it. You're only going to see maybe about 3/4 of an inch of this. And I'm not measuring. I'm just spacing them out the best I can. Then going in with my black Copic marker, and I'm coloring in every other stripe. You can use a ruler for this too. I didn't trust myself. I wanted to lay out my lines first and then color them in. Once that was all colored in, like I said, you're only going to see a little bit, so I didn't bother to go all the way over. I just made sure I had enough room there to have that border from my card panel. I trimmed a little bit off of each end of my main panel here just to make sure that my image was still centered. And for our sentiment, where I didn't really stamp that L very good, I'm bringing in a glaze pen. This is a black gel pen, and it gives it a little bit of dimension, so it matches the embossing that we did. You really can't even tell the difference. I adhered my little striped panel there down to a piece of, no, I'm sorry, an A2 size card base, and I'm using my Tombow Mono multi glue for this. Then I will take a piece of fun foam for my main panel. I use the kind that has adhesive on one side. Now, as long as you don't stick it down real, you don't press on it, you can peel it up. You can see the first time I didn't really line it up too well. I was able to peel that right back up. And I use my Tombow Mono multi glue to go ahead and adhere that to my little striped panel there. Now you will want to put this under something flat because it does take a while to dry on this fun foam. But that is the card for today, guys. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.